Yep, the government is warming up to resume overseas travel. If you've got business, medical needs or important family events, OS, it could be time to dust off that passport.
I see that as the sensible next step.
Sadly, sipping a bintang on the beach in Bali is not considered essential travel, not even for schoolies. But if you do need to jump on a jet, there's a chance you could avoid hotel quarantine when you get back and isolate at home instead.
Obviously, people have had to have their 2 vaccinations in order for them to do that. It's imperative for the states and territories to be very involved in that process because ultimately they would have to sign off on those arrangements.
Today, another complication for Australia's supply and rollout delays.
Breaking news, people will likely need a 3rd dose of the COVID vaccine
within 12 months.
The variants will play a key role.
Australia currently has 40 million Pfizer doses on order. We've received some, but it's not yet known when the rest will be delivered. Here's Dr Norman Swan rubbing some salt in that wound.
Pfizer knocked on the door of the government last June, saying, what do you want? When do you want it? And a deal wasn't done until the end of November. And so we came to the party late when Pfizer had already committed its doses. So we could have had Pfizer, but we chose clearly not to.
Confidence in the AstraZeneca vaccine has copped another blow too, with news a 48-year-old New South Wales woman died after developing blood clots just days after getting the jab.
Whether those 2 events are related is a matter for those experts that we'll be meeting today.
So, do we need to fix things on the home front before letting Aussies head overseas?
Well, to help answer that question, we're joined by epidemiologist Professor Tony Blakely. Tony, can Australia's AstraZeneca rollout survive another PR hit like this?
Well, we'll have to wait and see, but let's put things in perspective. If you get the AstraZeneca vaccine, compared to your chance in 1 year of dying of a road traffic crash, you're 300 times more likely to die of a road traffic crash in any 1 year in Australia than to die of this complication if you get the vaccine. So it's a very rare event. That all said, it's something that's put in your arm. It's something that people are thinking they don't need to take just yet. They could wait for another vaccine. So it is a bit on the knife edge at the moment with the confidence. I do hope and encourage people, certainly over the age of 60, 65, to be getting this vaccine because the benefits for them far outweigh the risks.
But it's clear the government acknowledges we're going to need more of the mRNA vaccines. And so with variants emerging in places like India and Brazil, we're being told by the scientists, those are the ones that will most likely to be able to deal with that. Should we in Australia be looking at manufacturing, producing those here locally?
Yes, and I think the decision point's been reached in the last week where we do need to take on mRNA technology. Prior to that, it was a bit of a hard call to make. mRNA technology can be very quickly redeployed for new variants to create new types of the vaccine. It's the technology of the future, not only for coronavirus, but for other things. We might as well get on with it and do part of our economic recovery as building this capacity as well as getting ready to make vaccine ourselves next year sometime.
So, Professor, given where we're at, the Prime Minister is already talking international travel. Do you think that might be a bit too soon?
Yes, and I think the best way to think about this is backwards. So imagine next year sometime when everybody, including kids, have been offered the vaccine and 70 to 80%, 85% of the population are vaccinated. We can then open up, but even then there'll be outbreaks. And then if you go back to when all adults are vaccinated, that still leaves 25% of the population, children, unvaccinated. But we can do some incremental things. So perhaps once everybody who's age 50 and over is vaccinated, we can do shorter quarantines, perhaps these home quarantine things. But the thing that's not been talked about is that we should be opening up first to the East Asian countries that have very low transmission rates. The idea that we can just bring people in from the UK because they're vaccinated is a little bit la-la land, because they're coming from a high virus environment. The vaccine will reduce their chance of carrying the virus perhaps by 95%, but 95% of quite a lot is still more than the very low chance of coming from China, for example. So there's a lot more thinking to be done on how we can slowly change our border control, but it will not be immediate and it will not be fulsome until next year at least.
Tony, do you believe that we can trust Australians to home isolate safely?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? There is technology like ankle bracelets. Text messaging can be used. South Korea used home visitors twice a day. And then you can use the trust type thing. You might be a bit more strict in the first week, and then in the second week, when the chances are diminishing that you're unwittingly carrying the virus, loosen it up. We could even do something like put people in hotels for 1 week, then home for 1 week. There's a whole lot of combinations we can look at here. The whole thing, though, is about trying to make sure the risk doesn't go above some threshold that we're willing to take. And that's the sort of incremental thinking we're going to need in the next 6 to 9 months.
So, Professor, is that just a nice way of saying that you don't trust Australians to quarantine at home?
Well, like I'm a New Zealander, so whatever I say at this point could go badly or right. Would you guys once who did an underarm bowl or something?
Too soon.
Look
Come
out.
on.
You know what? I think we're going to have to wrap it there, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
Cheerio.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.